IATROPHOBIA, the paralyzing, overwhelming fear of doctors and hospitals. It's a common phobia. But what if there's more to fear within the sterile walls of hospitals than just needles and sky-high medical bills? What if I told you there are some truly terrifying things that have even been caught on camera in these so-called houses of healing? From paranormal activities to monstrous patients, these disturbing moments will leave even the bravest viewers with a severe case of the chills. So, if you dare, come along as we explore the most shocking, unbelievable, and downright bone-chilling events ever recorded in hospitals and morgues. 15. Mysterious footage of demented patient. The term dark web springs to mind. Images and videos too horrible to post, even on the worst parts of social media. And that's exactly where this horrifying footage was first found. The clip supposedly shows a deranged patient in a Russian or Soviet psychiatric hospital. The gaunt and unkempt man was trapped in a cold, barren room with nothing but a bed. At first, his skeletal figure rocks back and forth on the bed, seemingly in a trance-like state. But as the footage progresses, we see the man losing his grip on reality. He shakes the bed violently in a fit of rage and tries to press his body against the walls, like he could escape if he only pushed hard enough. The most terrifying moment comes when the man suddenly disappears from the camera's view, only to reappear as the footage glitches, his distorted, almost inhuman face screaming into the camera. Just after this demented jump scare, the video stops making any sense, as it shows the man suspended in midair, as if he's lying on an invisible board. No explanation is given for what we're seeing, and the footage ends abruptly. While this may resemble a scene from a horror movie, no origin for the footage has yet surfaced. So, much like our next haunting entry, this video remains a mystery. 14. Doctor haunting hospital. If ghosts haunt the places they originally died, then you'd find hospital rooms or morgues to be crawling with spirits of deceased patients. But a Honduran man may have run into the ghost of a disgruntled doctor in this incredibly bone-chilling clip. And we must warn you, it's extremely terrifying. In a Honduran hospital, this man was recording an otherwise unremarkable hallway when suddenly, what looks like a spectral, semi-transparent humanoid figure began to pop his head out from behind a door, as if checking if the coast was clear. Petrified with fear, the man stands in place just long enough for this figure to decide it's okay for him to walk into the hallway, as his full spectral shape, resembling a man, walks out past the stretchers. Much like we wanted to while watching this clip, the man holding the camera came to his senses and darted out of the room as the spirit began moving toward him. But, ever curious about the paranormal event he had just recorded, he continued to peer through the doors he hid behind against his better judgment. According to hospital staff and visitors, this is believed to be the ghost of a doctor who sadly took his own life on hospital grounds and continues to haunt it to this day. While we are grateful for his creepy clip, we can't say we could have stuck around as long as the cameraman did. 13. Soul leaves patient's body. Many cultures hold traditional beliefs in souls in the afterlife. While there's no way of yet knowing whether any of these beliefs are true, a chilling yet awe-inspiring video captured in the morgue of a Chinese hospital may bring humanity closer to an answer. In this mysterious footage, a recently deceased woman's body lays on a stretcher, cloaked in a white sheet. Before being taken in for a morning autopsy, a semi-transparent ghostly figure shaped like a person comes up out of the body, pauses for a moment as if taking in its surroundings, then quickly drifts upward before disappearing. Many people were quick to claim this ghostly figure is the woman's soul leaving her body, that it's irrefutable proof of life after death. However, others claim this is all CGI, a video glitch, or any number of other ways to avoid facing the horrible veracity of the video. On closer inspection, we can see the stretcher's headboard clearly through the translucent shape of the specter, with no discernible cuts in the footage, making it appear real. Whatever this strange apparition really is remains a mystery. But if it is footage of a soul, do souls float out of every dead body so dramatically? And where are they now? Could one be silently floating right behind you. No, I'm kidding. But if that made you jump, you'll be absolutely blown away by this next clip. 12. Shadowy figure races over sleeping people. On a seemingly ordinary night in an Indian hospital, CCTV footage of people comfortably sleeping on the floor of a hallway captured something especially unsettling. At the end of the hallway, a massive shadow suddenly appears and takes the shape of a human. Without making a sound, the figure watches over the individual sleeping down the hall for a moment, before doing something that physics has no way to understand. This shadow person, without warning, takes off down the hall at breakneck pace, before disappearing from the field of view of the camera. The most disturbing part is that the soundly sleeping people in this hospital hallway didn't get disturbed whatsoever, and never knew that a mysterious figure was both watching and racing past them while they were at their most vulnerable. Really makes it difficult to get a good night's sleep when you know creepy apparitions like this might just be doing track and field practice in the very room you were in. Sleep tight. 11. Hospital guard checks in ghost patient. Working nighttime security is often uneventful and mostly composed of watching YouTube on your phone. But for this overnight guard at a hospital in Argentina, things went from routine to terrifying all too quickly. And what he witnessed made him begin to think he was going insane. On this night, in 2022, cameras caught the doors opening all on their own. However, the guard stood up and greeted someone totally invisible to the camera. According to him, a familiar-looking older woman. As the video shows, he signed her in and even pulled back the black stanchion rope like he would for any other visitor entering. But still, there's nobody else in sight. The camera angle changes as he begins escorting this invisible person toward the back. And here's where things got severely creepy. As the guard offered a wheelchair to this patient, the chair begins to move before he himself pushes it, exactly as it would if someone had sat down. Still, that's nothing compared to something you might have missed at first. After reviewing the tape, staff rushed to check the name the guard had written, and once they saw it, everyone in the room's blood ran cold. The name the guard had written down was that of a woman who had died in that very hospital the night before. The clip caused quite a controversy online, leading the hospital scrambling to avoid any press saying they had a haunting on their hands, and trying to claim it was all a prank. But no matter what his superiors say, to this day, the guard still swears that he interacted with a woman that night, and that this haunting experience was absolutely no laughing matter. 10. Security consultant records shadow person. While the last security guard only experienced one traumatizing paranormal event, the same cannot be said of the guards at a temporarily closed-down hospital in California. The owners couldn't keep security guards around for very long, as they'd complain of constantly seeing and hearing terrifying things that made many of them quit. One of the few who stayed on feared he was going insane and called in a security consultant to look around. Recording his walk through the hospital, this consultant unknowingly captured something absolutely horrifying. In one hallway, the man felt a sudden paranoia, like he was being watched. He turned toward a hallway, and from one of the supposedly empty rooms, a frightening all-black figure peered his head out. The man did a double take, not initially noticing the haunting figure, only to find an empty hallway. Upon reviewing the footage, the man noticed how menacing this entity actually looked, and took to Reddit to ask about what he'd encountered. Many answers came from enraptured viewers, but the most common was a shadow person. Shadow people are supernatural entities people all over the world have long claimed to see. According to some accounts, shadow people make themselves visible to scared individuals in order to feed on their fear. One viewer also slowed down the video to try to discern if it was fake, only to notice a horrifying detail. The foot of this figure looks like it sinks into the solid floor beneath it. The guard who originally contacted our cameraman was happy to learn that he wasn't going crazy, but not too excited to confirm the horrifying experiences he'd been having were very much real. 9. Invisible force slamming doors in the morgue. According to the cameraman of this terrifying paranormal encounter, watching horror movies is easy, but guarding the legal medical institute in Cueba, Brazil, at night is hard. We've already seen the horrors some hospital guards have faced, but in this mysterious video, 2 nighttime guards venture into the depths of the hospital's morgue to investigate a loud slamming noise. Upon arriving, the slamming gets louder, and the lights overhead flicker with no apparent cause. As they still their nerves to find the source of the sound, a red metal door can be seen, violently slamming over and over. Thinking perhaps someone cloaked in darkness must be pranking them, they get closer. But arriving within a few feet of the door, the banging stopped and the lights went black. Feeling panic unlike anything they've ever experienced, the guards pulled out their only light source, flashlights, and looked around. As you'd probably guessed, nobody else was there. As they circled the area looking for clues, another bang was heard, sending a shock through their bodies. Upon inspecting the source of the sound, a door at the end of the hall, the men confirmed it was locked, and nobody could have come in or out of this hallway but them. So, who or what might have caused this supernatural slamming? Perhaps the souls of patients who died inside the hospital, or maybe the same entity in our next clip. 8. Haunted ambulance. In this unexplained clip from Peru, the driver of an ambulance walks out of his vehicle, leaving his driver's side door wide open. What happens next is where the mystery comes in, as the door suddenly closes perfectly, as if someone just got into the driver's seat. But as you can clearly see, there's nobody there. Some have attempted to claim that the wind must have closed the door, but looking at other details in the video, there's no other visible signs of any strong wind. Add to that when we look closer at the clip, it looks like the movements or shadows cast by a person getting into the ambulance's cab can be seen ever so faintly. One can also see some sort of figure sitting in the ambulance. But what happens next really ramps up the mystery. As the shadows in the ambulance shift, the door suddenly opens again. So, what could be the cause of this weird vehicular activity? Maybe it's the ghost of this ambulance's former departed driver who doesn't know he hasn't been scheduled since his passing. Or maybe it's the lost spirit of a patient who took a ride in this ambulance and unfortunately didn't make it, who's now the Spectral co-pilot of this emergency vehicle. Whatever it may be, it isn't near as awful as our next entry. 7. Former hospital turned haunted home. Stephen Lee could be called brave for moving into a home in Kent, England, that was once a Victorian hospital where untold numbers of people had died. It shouldn't have then come as a surprise to Lee when some of those patients still called his house home. After setting up a security camera to watch over his dogs, Stephen came across something truly terrifying in his home. He then uploaded this footage of his living area, in which we can see a ghostly white apparition float through the patio door before gliding over his sofa and out of view. A moment later, a second, smaller, foggy figure, perhaps the ghost of a child following its mother, passes by in the same way. Stephen has no way to explain the white figures, as he says the door leads to a private garden which doesn't face any roads, ruling out an odd effect caused by reflecting headlights. Viewers then pointed out that just before this large white specter floats into frame, an orb appears visible in the footage. The prevalence of the orb in this footage only added to Stephen's fear of his own home, and he mentioned that in the days before this event, one of his bulldogs had been growling at something that nobody could see. Despite being a lifelong skeptic, Stephen said that after watching the chilling video 1 billion times, he had to accept that it was something supernatural. And if this somehow isn't enough to also make you a believer, then this next segment is sure to convert you. 6. Haunted wheelchair makes daring escape. Hollywood has made one of the most terrifying types of haunting, poltergeists, famous over the years. But these possessions of objects, significant to spirits, aren't all movie magic. One chilling example of this might have occurred when one night, the wheelchair of a recently deceased patient at a hospital in Thailand suddenly began to move on its own. Security footage shows the chair suddenly rolling to the end of the ramp before being stopped, which could be explained by the floor's angle or strong wind. However, a moment later, the chair defies physics by moving in an entirely different direction, slowly at first, then faster. The wheelchair rolls backwards up the ramp, This video frightened the hospital staff, as the wheelchair had been used by a cherished patient of theirs until his recent death. They then attempted to find a less paranormal explanation by recreating the scene. When they first placed the wheelchair in the same spot, it did roll down to the end of the ramp. This made the staff think that perhaps the angle was responsible for the spooky scene. However, no matter how long they waited, it never rolled backwards like in the original clip, convincing them that the ghost of their beloved patient really had returned for his wheelchair. Now, it's time for today's subscriber pick. One of our subscribers sent us this ghastly image of the inside of a morgue when one of the supposed cadavers turned out not to be dead. Talk about a heavy sleeper. Imagine taking a nap and waking up in a mortuary. Had he just been mistaken for deceased, or had he already gone through an autopsy while still alive? That's where you come in. Now, back to the horror of our next terrifying clip. 5. Spectral stretcher moving itself. CCTV cameras usually help us feel safer, but for the staff of an Indian hospital where this clip was captured, security footage made them feel terrified of their workplace. In the video, a stretcher begins moving on its own. While this was initially written off by staff as wind, upon closer inspection, they were horrified to find a humanoid figure flickering in and out of the footage near the stretcher. At this point, the stretcher shifts forward again, before rolling back the opposite way, and spends another 2 minutes moving around before falling off the sidewalk. After this first occurrence, cameras in another area of the hospital caught equally unexplained footage of another stretcher succumbing to the same invisible force. However, this time the staff wasn't just watching on the monitors. A nearby employee was casually getting a drink of water near this stretcher when it suddenly rolled slightly. Thinking it was just a normal occurrence, the man approaches to move the stretcher back, when his blood suddenly went cold as the stretcher quickly rolled further away from him without any visible explanation. The man turned tail as fast as he could, grabbed his water bottle, and very wisely got the heck out of there. 4. Baby thieves in India. Becoming a new parent is one of the greatest joys a person could experience. But losing a child is equally the most devastating crisis anyone can go through. In this all too terrifying clip from a hospital in India, it's a seemingly normal day for workers and visitors when a woman dressed in white casually strolls in. However, this seemingly normal woman's intentions were anything but ordinary. A few moments later, the camera captures the same woman leaving the hospital while cradling something in her arms. That thing was a 1-day-old newborn baby that's absolutely not hers. This woman somehow slipped into a hospital totally unnoticed, grabbed a newborn baby from the maternity ward, and slipped out just as unseen. Or so she thought. It seems like halfway through her theft, the woman felt anxious, as anyone stealing someone else's baby would, and noticed the CCTV camera recording her nefarious act. But did this deter her? No, she was completely committed to her mission. This wasn't an isolated incident either. In fact, India has had a large number of baby stealing incidents over the last several years, like this woman, who was caught by surveillance cameras carrying a 5-day-old baby she had just stolen, hoping to give her childless daughter the baby to raise as her own. Still, you'd think with baby theft being such a well-known issue, it wouldn't be so easy for kidnappers to get their hands on newborns in the first place. 3. Hospitalized doctor's daughter attempts patricide. Sometimes, the paranormal isn't the scariest thing one can find in a hospital. As captured in this cold-hearted footage from a hospital in Chennai, India, humans can be quite monstrous. Here, we see the hospital room of 82-year-old Dr. Rajagopal. He was being treated in the hospital he owned alongside his son. In this clip, his daughter, Jayasuda, and her 2 sons came for what looked like a loving family visit, but turned out to be something much more sinister. His daughter asked the nurses to leave the room so they could have some privacy. At this point, her son takes out legal paperwork and forces his incapacitated grandfather to sign and fingerprint without his conscious consent. These documents would have transferred ownership of that very hospital they were in to Jayasuda upon her father's death, a death she wanted to come sooner than later, as she cold-heartedly removed the IV, delivering life-saving medication into her father's neck. The nurses re-entered the room as the family members acted like nothing had happened. Then, as the patient began to complain and a pool of blood from the IV gathered on the floor, the family makes a daring escape. Thankfully, Dr. Rajagopal's son had grown suspicious of his sister and had set up the CCTV camera to catch her, just in case she tried anything like this. However, despite replacing the IV and revoking the falsified documents, the man still died 2 months later. A death which might have been avoided had his daughter not turned out to be a greedy, malicious killer. 2. Haunted chairs. If poltergeists become angry, they often throw objects around, which is what may have been captured in these 2 separate videos of just such creepy activity. In this first clip, hospital security wanted to check what had happened overnight in a room that had been found trashed in the morning. Assuming a patient might have stumbled in and thrown things around, security reviewed the clip and found not a culprit, but this terrifying footage of a poster appearing to violently throw itself off the wall and land all the way across the room. Then another creepy occurrence as this chair is invisibly shoved across the room until it topples against the wall. And finally, a filing cabinet suddenly slamming itself open, all with no earthly explanation. Similarly, in another hospital located in Chile, the staff recorded footage from an empty hospital room that made their spines shiver. Despite appearing totally unoccupied, the black visitor's chair next to bed forcefully flips direction, terrifying the nurses who recorded this footage on their phones. Then, just as unusually, the IV stand began to move, adding to the staff's horror. So, were these mysterious moving objects the work of the souls of patients who died in the hospital? Or maybe something more sinister? 1. Four-legged creature in abandoned hospital. John Edmonds has an odd idea of fun. The urban explorer and YouTuber ventured into the ruins of the Overbrook Insane Asylum in the old Essex County Hospital in hopes of making content for his channel. But what he found instead sent him running and screaming away. While recording the decayed remains of the hospital, John's friend heard a sudden shriek echoing from the other side of the hospital. As John turned to find the source of the scream, he saw an oddly shaped four-legged creature. The creature took a few odd steps across the doorway, terrifying John and his friend, who understandably ran away as fast as they could. When describing his encounter after posting the video, John described it as a four-legged freak. The cryptid they encountered looks nothing like a person, ruling out a hoax. Slowing down the video, we see its movements are fluid, unlike a person moving on all fours. John's encounter with the creature remains a mystery, but one commenter claims he came across the same creature on the roof of the asylum, growling at him and his friends as he walked by. Unfortunately, it isn't just abandoned hospitals which hold horrors you definitely wouldn't want to meet, as this next haunting video proves. And with that, you're officially able to say you were brave enough to handle all 15 of the scariest things ever captured in hospitals and morgues. From creepy to outright horrifying, these entries might have made you a bit more afraid of a trip to the doctor, but since you made it this far, we think you'll be just fine. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again in the next one.